People's Platform.
Good evening and welcome to the People's Platform. Now, the tourism sector of Sri Lanka has gone through an avalanche of issues. Sri Lanka's economic crisis last year, the COVID-19 pandemic, the Easter Sunday attacks, a 26-year-long ethnic conflict, 2 insurrections, and these are massive traumas that the Sri Lankan people have had to endure. How must Sri Lanka's tourism sector now be reimagined? Let's find out. We've invited to our studios Chalaka Gajabahu. He is the chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion Bureau. Good evening and welcome, Chalaka.
Good evening, Sonali. Thank you very much.
Absolutely wonderful to have you here in the studio with us. Chalaka, when we speak about the recovery of tourism, ensuring that the negative publicity that has been sort of given to Sri Lanka through global media campaigns, etc. How must we now position ourselves in a strategic manner so that Sri Lankan tourism can be featured as a feasible destination for international tourists?
Very good question, because like you very correctly said, especially if you take COVID out of the equation, because the whole world went through the COVID crisis, and especially the tourist destinations, but then soon after that Sri Lanka had to go through the economic crisis we had last year, and you very correctly said the 3 months how media portrayed us all over the world. Yes, that's a rightful thing for any media organization to do, but what I want to say is changing the mindset of the people. It's not easy, even though I don't know whether you still watch international media. Even if they want to show something positive about Sri Lanka, they have to show what happened last year. Still even on international networks, it's in their trailers as well, what happened in Sri Lanka and so forth. At the same time, especially in European countries, the travel advisories played a huge role, because insurance plays a big role as well when they have to come to Sri Lanka. So us taking over last year June, along with our Honorable Minister Mr. Harin Fernando, our first task was actually to convince the B2B consumer rather than the B2C, because when we look at it, even when we talk to our partners globally, or forget about globally, even next door to India, they've traveled many a times, the CEOs, the chairman of travel agencies and companies. The first question they ask is, last year I'm talking about, whether you have fuel, whether you have food, whether you have medicine, so as a task, the first thing we did was, let's go to our next door neighbor, which is India, which is our biggest market, and we did 3 road shows there in Mumbai, Delhi and Bangalore, and followed by 3 other road shows as well. So that was the starting point for us. But at the same time, it's not easy to convince people, even if you get the corporates to come in and experience Sri Lanka, that image, that the black mark that was created, is not easy to take it out. That's what I'm saying. We are not bringing goods into Sri Lanka.
Have we moved beyond damage control?
I think we are there, because what we did was we started this program called Seeing is Believing, an influencer program with our key 7-8 markets. So we bring in influencers from media groups, social media networks and all that. So those we took up, it's a 1,000-member influencer program already. We have had about 150 to 200 influencers coming into Sri Lanka and talking positivity, which is the reality of Sri Lanka, and it has worked. And at the same time, our social media plus our travel network fairs with the private sector, along with the private sector, has played a very positive image about the Sri Lanka situation right now.
Chalaka, when we speak of our neighboring countries, we see how Thailand has, for example, stepped up its tourism promotion measures through its 5F foundations:
Correct.
Food, Film, Festival, Fashion and Fight. If we take other countries like Vietnam, wellness tourism, we have so many aspects in Sri Lanka which go beyond taking tourists to the cultural triangle or to Sigiriya or the tea factories. So speak to us about what you at the helm of Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion Bureau have done to promote adventure tourism, for example, surfing, history tourism, religious tourism. We have so many shipwrecks, wildlife, rainforests. We have a plethora of beautiful, fascinating, magical spaces and places. But people don't know this because Sri Lanka isn't marketed in a positive light at all. What have you done?
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. There's nothing wrong about that. Because the thing is, we don't have a brand footprint. Unlike our competing market, you're talking about Thailand, yes, they have never changed their tourism marketing strategy. Amazing Thailand, Incredible India, Truly Malaysia. You know, they have not changed it for 20, 30 years. But Sri Lanka, every 2 years, whether it's a government or whether it's a minister or whether it's a chairman, the marketing strategy changes. And we have never, I will go on record to say, we have not done a global campaign for 15 years or so, or a proper brand footprint has not been created. To answer to your question, you're talking about wellness, you're talking about adventure, you're talking about romance, everything. Yes, we have. For my one line brief, when we are briefing the agencies, we are an all-in-one capsule minus the snow. That is Sri Lanka. Of course, our competing markets has it, but then this is Sri Lanka. It's an island. It's a small it's a small space that you can have all this. Yes, we have not identified our umbrella brand position. That is very important, and the categories. And for example, adventure can be broken into so many subcategories. So our biggest task that we are going to do is come January this year to launch this new brand platform, the campaign. The thing is, you can't look at a campaign just by a tagline. That does not justify, you know, whether you call whatever the tagline, whether it's Amazing Thailand or Incredible India, or it doesn't mean anything when you say Incredible India. You won't need to show what Incredible India is. You need to show who Sri Lanka is. And a tourism image of a country can actually build the image of the country overall as well. So that is my task. Actually, that campaign is in progress right now. It's in production right now. The global campaign will be launched end of January, early February. It was done through a tender process, and one agency won that pitch, and they are going ahead with it. And yes, it's a new tagline, but the tagline won't do any justice until you see the actual strategy and the creative behind it. That will do justification to take that message forward. Again, very clearly, we are an all-in-one capsule, being an island. A lot of people like you very correctly, we are only like sun and sea. We are not only sun and sea, we have everything. 140 shipwrecks, and you know, CNN recently said Jaffna is one of the biggest hidden treasures in the world, top 20. And then Instagram, we are the number 7 Instagrammable nation in the world. So all this, we need to take it forward in a very positive manner.
Chalaka, tourism cannot be done in a vacuum or in isolation. There needs to be a lot of interconnectedness, collaborative work done between ministries, government departments. How has your relationship been at the Bureau with the other key stakeholders?
Again, a very important question. It's very important whether it's wildlife, whether it's aviation, whether it's marine, that all needs to, you know, put their hands together and work towards it, because tourism alone on its own can't do it. That's why there has been an interministerial committee that been appointed to sort those, for example, you know, the tickets for trains, you know, there are issues. Then for example, the national parks, the entry points, you know, sometimes you have massive queues. So, you know, very recently, 2 months ago, when His Excellency he visited for opening of a new 5-star hotel in Yala, where he went and visited the park, and we are going to suggest a new digitized system for ticketing, you know, to fast track this process. Like in other countries, look at African nations, how they have developed themselves. They only have adventure, but we have all the other aspects. We have not done it properly. That process, and then there's a 10-year master plan that has been developed within the 4 association within the tourism ministry, which is Sri Lanka Tourism led by Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, then Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion Bureau, the Convention Bureau, and SLIDM, which is the hotel school. The 10-year master plan is now being developed and is being presented to the cabinet very soon, so that process will happen along with the other institutes that we need to go through.
In terms of money coming into the Sri Lankan economy, how is that tracked? And why I'm asking this question is, we find that sometimes tourists come to Sri Lanka on a tourist visa, and then probably in the south coast or the east coast, they're suddenly running businesses, and this is not properly regulated. And this also results in locals being denied of opportunities to conduct business, carry on business. So there are these exclusionary practices that take place, and there's no one to regulate it.
again, yes, that is happening in certain areas. I don't want to mention which, especially from which countries that is there, but we had cases in down south in certain areas, and then areas like the East Coast, there are these issues that coming through. But especially led by SLTDA, there is a program now to monitor this system along with our tourist police. Tourist police also being now being strengthened along the ministry to give them guidelines how to track these, and especially the check the visas and all that. So there is now a system in place going through. It's not going to be done overnight. You can't just take that out, because if you look at countries like especially Thailand and Indonesia, very similar cases are happening with certain country representatives who are there. They come on holiday and this thing, but we are now in a process along with the SLTD and the tourist police to justify, not to justify, to take this out of the system, to minimize, at least to not for this to happen in future.
Right. There is a gap in ensuring safety of tourists. So Sri Lanka is not known for ensuring safety of tourists. This is because you can't go in a bus without getting catcalled. You can't go on a train without getting catcalled. So there are these issues of harassment, of stalking, of catcalling. And these are rampant issues. This is a systemic issue we face in Sri Lanka, and tourists have to sometimes bear the brunt of it. So feeling safe is a prerequisite for anyone to come to Sri Lanka. What are the measures that are being taken?
Well, the thing is this, it's, if you look at it as a percentage, is not overall all tourists go through that. I would say that's a minute number, but then again, what is publicized, if there are good 99 things that happens, it's that one incident that goes all over the world as negative for what happened, for example, in Pigeon Island, and then recently with the three-wheeler driver, that one. Yes, actually, if you look at it, if you take testimonials from lot of tourists in coming to Sri Lanka, overall our population, our warm heart, the hospitality matters a lot to them, and that positive message goes through. That's why we are next year, the thing is about educating people as well. We need to show how important tourists are for Sri Lanka and how it will grow the economy. So we are going to come up with a massive domestic campaign to educate our people on how important, whether you are white, black or brown or whatever, how important, how we need to look after them. We need to remind our people, yes, we went through a crisis, but how important these people are to us. Because if you remember, during the war, how when we couldn't recruit soldiers to the forces, there was a different type of a campaign. So, but this has to be like a positive campaign to show the revival of the country, how important tourism is to the country, and that will be implemented probably in the second quarter of next year after the global campaign. Is very important. So we need to educate it. We can't just do it by putting rules and regulations, whether you are a three-wheeler driver or a bus driver or a train driver or a teenager, from a school kid to a mother and father. We need to tell them. We don't need to educate them. We need to remind Sri Lankans who we are. We are honest, genuine, hospitable people. Don't forget what happened during COVID. Most of the tourists were stuck in Sri Lanka when they couldn't stay in hotels. There are a lot of places that they took them to their houses and looked after them. If you remember that story, even Nas Daily did a campaign on that. If you remember how hospitable Sri Lankans, how caring Sri Lankans are, we kept them in our houses. So we need to remind our people how to ensure that they are protected. So that's going to be a social message for the whole country, for the 22 million people.
Because there has to be local impetus and buy-in, and the attitude of Sri Lankans must be aligned so that they know that we need tourism to ensure economic recovery. So you're on that. 100%
on that, because like I said, it can't be in a rule book. It's just that it's setting up the mindset of the people. Even if a kid sees something happening bad, they need to report it or they need to prevent it. I'm pretty sure I have seen enough stories on social media how if injustice happens to another people, there are other people who stand by for you. So we need to remind people to take that message across very positively, and actually to take that message as well, a different campaign altogether from all media networks. I request that when we come up with that concept, it has to be a common platform for all of it. It's a social message that we need to take it to our people.
How is Sri Lanka tourism utilizing artificial intelligence and technology to expedite processes?
Again, in the past it has been quite slow. We need to actually, because it's a government system, to fast track things and get things done. For example, you earlier asked about, how do we, measure our collections in terms of, how the tourism industry, especially the Tourism Promotion Bureau and Tourism Development Authority works on the TDL, which is the Tourism Development Levy, which comes from the 1% that comes from the private sector, on their revenue.
Right.
Yeah, it's tourism development levy is with the organizations which are registered with the SLTDA, right? So it's basically 90% of the business, whether it's a big conglomerate or a medium or a small scale, they are registered. So this was developed, I think, in 2004, where the Tourism Development Authority and Tourism Promotion Bureau gets 1% of that revenue that comes into the private sector, and then 1% is that comes to us. So that's the funding that we do our promotional programs and the marketing and all that. So that also needs to be, it's in a slow process. We are going to digitize that process and take it forward. It's a process that we need to implement. What you have to understand is right now our priority is the campaign that we need to get in, but at the same time AI and digitalization is very important, and that will be a second stage next year to look into as
what
well.
are the measures that are being taken to collaborate and have conversations with other regional jurisdictions and across the world? For example, in China and the Maldives, there's a very good relationship, and the Maldives expects the highest number of tourists from China, because their branding is all over the place in China.
Absolutely. So basically a good example is what we did with India. We had the Thai Conventions Travel Agents Association of India. We had 650 delegates 3 months ago in July. So they are the biggest organization in India. We had their annual general meeting in Sri Lanka after a long time. That was a huge positive this thing, and the results are coming in. As you can see, India is number one, and at the same time China, yes, we have, because China, don't forget, China opened only on 20th of April this year. So soon after they opened, we did 2 road shows, and we are doing another one in December, because their booking pattern starts, their holiday starts about February, March for that matter, and with a social media campaign. And there are some senior tourism government official delegate, I can't confirm that right now, will be coming to Sri Lanka in December, where we'll be signing an MOU as well, and understanding to promote tourism both ways, and especially as a benefit for Sri Lanka. Another point that you raised about Maldives is very important. It's quality versus quantity. If you look at the average expenditure of a tourist in Sri Lanka, it's $180 roughly, whereas Maldives is about $700. It's very important that we get the correct audience as well. There's not much of a difference in terms of luxury offering that we give to Maldives or other parts of the world, but it's just that we are right now giving almost a 5 to 6 to 7 star holiday for a 3-star, 4-star price.
Which is my next question. We get a plethora of tourists who are backpackers. They manage to book a hostel somewhere by the beach, eat from the chumpang guy, and then so very little money is coming into the Sri Lankan economy. So how do we attract the high spending tourists?
Very good. Actually, we need the backpackers as well. Don't forget those backpackers.
Absolutely.
Those backpackers are the CEOs and the doctors and the lawyers of the future. That's what they are. That's where they start with. And because I'll come to your point, because backpackers and the low spenders are important, because we have the SMEs, the homestays, the small hotels and all that. They need to survive after the crisis as well. We are not saying it's a bad thing. It's a very good thing. But then medium to high end is very important. I think we in the system we have about formal sector, we have about 45,000 rooms in the country which is registered with us at SLTDA, and then out of which I think 9,000 are luxury high-end room accommodation I'm talking about. But as you know, President has a vision by 2030 to attract 5 million tourists into the country. Out of that 5 million, 2.5 million from the high-end sector. But then that can't be done overnight. That's why it's a 5-year plan. We need to build the infrastructure for it as well. Don't forget, we can't do that with 9,000 10,000 rooms. And luxury tourism is not only the room, the high-end room, it's the offering as well. We need to show how Sri Lanka comes from a high-end luxury point of view, like your first question, the offerings that we have. For example, marine tourism, underwater, looking at shipwrecks is high-end. They bring their $1 million cameras and go under, and we go to Kumana, one of the biggest bird migrations in the world. Again, that's high-end. They might not spend $500 for a room, but they spend on everything else when they are in that country.
Sure.
So very important that we need to identify all those aspects. Yes, we have a vision in 2030 to achieve that 5 million with the 2.5 million high-end market, and to market it properly as well.
Speaking of infrastructure, let's take a simple example, Chalaka. Can a person use a toilet in a train station across Sri Lanka? I mean, this is just, it's not rocket science. So this is why I asked you the question about collaboration. What do you think can be done? It can be done, because the thing is, we need to work together. For example, now we are starting a project. It's done. So for example, Nanuaya. It's under construction. Actually, most of the funding is coming through us. So we are contributing to those effects as well. But then again, those key destinations, for example, Sigiriya is going to be the first sustainable destination, with correct facilities and all that. So we are going to go project by project into the tourism zones with the government and the private sector, collaborating to develop the infrastructure of these people. It's ongoing right now. And then other the global institutes like the European Union, ADB, USAID are contributing a lot for these factors as well. That is ongoing right now. Chalaka, you mentioned a lot of points. Are these plans scientifically backed, or are they backed by market research? Yes, of course. Okay. Especially, especially you're referring to the infrastructure side, or you're referring to the marketing aspect of it? The marketing aspect. Oh yes, definitely. Because the thing is, especially what Sri Lanka has to offer. If we don't know what we have to offer, we don't need research for that. As in terms of what we have to offer, but we need to understand what the Germans want. And even in German, I'm just taking Germany as an example. What does the mature market wants? Wellness, and what does the youth wants? The backpacker, and what does the medium, the families when they travel, so we need to understand those aspects of it. For example, India can be broken into so many segments. We are talking about 200 million plus middle class, and that middle class is high, and they know for the first bike to buy, first vehicle they have to buy, how they are very well planned, how they get married, where they get married, and where do they go on their honeymoon. So those things have been looked into with our general knowledge, and the agency that we appointed as a strategic communication partner, they had to back it up. For example, like I said, I didn't mention this earlier, even though we are coming up with a global campaign, we are not going to go and advertise in 50-60 countries. We are going for the lower hanging fruits, because with a limited budget, you can't go all over the world. So we have identified 9 key markets. Those 9 key markets are India, China, our traditional market, UK, France, Germany, Russia, Australia, 3-4 countries in Middle East, Scandinavia, followed by Japan and South Korea. Those are going to be our key markets for our new campaign. It doesn't mean that we are not going to work on other countries like Italy, Spain, Netherlands, other Asian countries. For that, we are going to do those influencer programs, the fam tours, the familiarization tours, the media groups, and take part in those travel fairs and trade fairs with the private sector. Most of the time, these travel fairs and road shows, what we do is we facilitate. It's the private sector who takes part. Now, for example, WTM, which is the big one of the second biggest European travel fair, that is going to happen in London from 5th to the 9th of November. 72 Sri Lankan companies are taking part, but we are the ones who are doing all the logistics, and the stall design and everything is done by us based on the new communication platform. So all that is now being put into place. But the thing is, what you have to understand is, when we took over for the first 6 months, we were firefighting. Don't laugh when I say this. For the first 2-3 months, we had to find fuel to drop tourists back into the airport. Sure, yeah. But now it is an amazing recovery. That shows the resilience, not only it's the resilience of the people.
how we fight back. We were almost 5.5 feet under, but then we came back, in a very short, and tourism is a best example how we made. I'm not saying that we did it alone. It's a whole sector. The private sector plays a huge role, which is the travel agents association, the hotel associations, all that played a huge role together to bring this up again.
Chalaka, my final question: when positioning Sri Lanka as a feasible destination for tourists, we can't only be scrambling for dollars. We have to ensure that we don't increase the inequalities. We have to include the Sri Lankan people in the process of tourism, from the street vendors to the SMEs, the homestays, the micro businesses, the large hotels. What are your plans?
Well, that again, this refers to a question that you asked earlier also. That is going to be part of our domestic strategic plan as well. The domestic campaign, from a street vendor to an SME to a homestay, how important it is to identify their contribution as well, and how they become a part of the system as well. So that, we develop that sector, and then we are coming up with this app along with the ADB funded app that is going to be a part of it as well, for where they can see and do things that the tourists want with this sector of people. That's going to be a separate segment altogether, and that sector is going to be part of our global campaign as well. That's going to be a separate category, and huge connection will be given to them to profile them properly as well.
All right, so things are looking good for Sri Lanka tourism?
Absolutely, yes. We are going to achieve the 1.55 million target by end of this year.
All right. Thank you very much, Chalaka Gajabahu, Chairman, Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion Bureau. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sonali. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching us. We'll see you again tomorrow. Good night.